Ding was an incel-brained otaku who had no real-life goals other than collecting figurines and going to anime conventions. But all these changed when he found himself in a fantasy world as a weak-ass farmer-class mage who must save the fairies who were tricked and sealed to be used as tools by his evil alternate self. After finishing up the latest chapter of his new manga series, Ding watered his flowers one last time before packing up his suitcase for his vacation. He went straight to the airport excited for his trip to a hentai fest theme park that would be filled with every weeb's greatest fantasy. Once his flight is announced, he heads to the lobby with his headphones on and doesn't even notice himself walking into an otherworldly portal that isekais him to another world. By the time the idiot realized he wasn't in Japan anymore, he almost got crushed by a cart driven by a ground dragon that yeeted him out of the way. He soon realized he was in a strange place where everyone was Spider-Man and Harry Potter. He watched different people casually use their magical abilities and even saw the dragon from Shrek working part-time for another girl. Our guy assumed he was in the theme park and everything was just some super realistic CGI effect that DC Studios fails to deliver every time. He took random pictures just admiring the scenery, even posing with a ground dragon that licked his face, which finally made him realize Truck-kun now has so many subsidiaries. He froze in shock in the exact spot for days, thinking and hoping that someone would take him back to Japan so he could continue his manga series, but when no one came back for him, he decided to accept his situation, thinking he was so awesome that he was isekai'd, which meant that he must be the protagonist of the story that would be overpowered with so much money and fame, with the chance to create a harem of maids and 106 centimeters tsunderes. While he daydreamed, an old man asked him if he was there for the entrance test to the Magic Academy. Although he didn't know what the man was talking about, he let the old man grab him by the arm and decided to just go along, as that's how the Isekai troop normally unfolds. The old man explained that 80% of the test was to assess magical affinity, but he shouldn't worry as no one has been useless enough to fail in the history of the town. On arriving at the stone where every participant would be tested, he is asked to step forward, but man decides to rant about being the main character, ready to shock them all with his out-of-the-chart stat. But when he touched the stone, it glowed white, causing him to be disqualified by the inspectors. He asked them if the bright white light meant nothing, but everyone started laughing at him like he was a clown. They explained that the continent of Daoya is a world of magic that has different kai such as golden, white, wood, water, wind, and fire spirits, and everyone can only have one magic source from the spirit. However, when he touched the stone, the white light shone, which meant that he had zero magic or kai. They had to use a microscope to analyze the light and found out he had a trail of green light, so they nicknamed him the Wooden Trash and asked him to come back when the light was bright enough to be seen without a microscope. As he left frustrated, they all laughed at him, calling him the record-breaking loser, but he was still convinced he couldn't possibly be a weak-ass protagonist, so he went to the forest and tried to practice making wood rise since he had the wood attribute. But nothing happened no matter how hard he tried. While he whined, the old man came again and tried to motivate him by suggesting he become a gardener since he was useless when it came to magic. He claimed he might even become successful since he has a wood attribute, so Ding reluctantly accepted his invitation. He became a farmer who helped around the garden, watering flowers, tilling the soil, and using his useless magic to grow plants that were actually aesthetically pleasing. One day, he heard noises coming from a part of the farm, and when he got there, he found out a guy was using the flowers he grew to impress a lady. They soon noticed someone was watching them, so they chased after Ding using their earth magic to throw him up, after which they used a wind spell to ensure he didn't die from the fall. When they asked if he saw anything, he lied that he didn't, claiming to be a useless gardener with expired glasses. The lady, whom they call Sasha, arrived and also used her ice magic to torment him so much that he became traumatized. That night, he complained that living in a fantasy world without magic was like eating cereal with no milk or sugar. But the old man told him he once traveled around the world and learned the pinnacle of strength was not magic but fairy power. He narrated how he went in search of the fairy power all his life, but was only able to find one seed. The old man gave him the fairy seed, which made him very excited that the writers had finally decided to make him a peak character. However, the man explained that he had already tried to grow the seed using different methods but failed each time. He told him to try his luck but shouldn't be too hopeful. But on a closer look, Ding noticed there was a seal on the seed which was only visible to virgins. He decided to sow the seed by filling it with magic during the day or using a magic circle and a talisman other times, but it never worked. He tried breaking it with a hammer, but the seed was stronger than Mike Tyson's balls, and as a last resort he decided to try a method he learned from a light novel. That night, he spilled his blood on the seed, but that didn't yield anything positive either, and in frustration, he took a walk around the forest where he found Sasha and the two simps who wanted to develop plot since she was a popular TikTok celebrity. He watched as she transformed into a vampire and feasted on the first simp, causing the other guy to activate his rock magic, sending barrages of rock fists towards her, but she used her vines to stop them all before capturing him too. Ding made a run for it since he was basically powerless. However, the vampire took notice of him and showed up behind him. He tried to run away, but she put him in a chokehold, after which she used a vine to induct him into the donut club. As his life began to fade slowly, he was taken to another realm filled with red spider lilies, and in the middle of everything was a girl with horns. He thought that was the part where she calls him Goshujin-sama, but the fairy drew out a sword and announced that she had come to take his life. But when she materialized in the physical world, she realized he was already on the brink of death, which made her pissed that someone else stole her prey. The ugly vampire showed up behind her claiming that she was her type, but the fairy cut down her vines in a flash, bringing Ding down and using her magic powers to prolong his life even for a bit. She suddenly launched towards the vampire, blitzing her so fast that she couldn't even react, after which she proceeded to use the vampire's life force to heal Ding, who was literally dead. He woke up after a while, and seeing that he was perfectly healed by the fairy, he began to have weird fantasies about using her as a slave that would serve him in a maid costume. The fairy, whose name is Mo-Fei, asked if he recognized her, to which he responded that he didn't, so she told him she only saved him to kill him herself. She claimed it was her lifelong dream to kill him, but anytime she struck him with her sword, the injuries showed up in her body instead of his. She assumed he was using a trick on her, so she continued the attack like a dumbass, but a woman showed up to interrupt them. She introduced herself as the Dean of Shoyu Academy and revealed that a fairy could not harm her master. She still ignored her warning, but this time she was blown away by an invisible barrier. The Dean handed Ding a fairy manual that had been passed down for centuries and made him place his hands on it. Immediately he held it. A bright light linked him to Mo-Fei, allowing him to seal her in the book like she was some Pokemon. He is taken to the academy where the Dean explains how the fairies suddenly disappeared overnight, and the only thing left was the manual that belonged to the academy. Ding asked the chairman to give the book to him as he is the only one who could summon a fairy, but she refused, telling him she couldn't just give away an academy treasure. She told him she'd hand the book to him if he enrolled in the academy and helped her locate the vampire hiding in the school. Ding refused the offer as he was too weak to fight a freaking vampire, but when she told him the book had 3 fairy seeds, he changed his mind and promised to be her pet. Later that night, he glanced through the book where he found out the summoned fairies' power level depended on how much they liked their master. He recalled how Mo-Fei almost killed him when they first met, but the thought activated the system fairy of the book. On hearing her voice, he became excited that he was finally given a system to upgrade his status as an Isekai protagonist. When he asked why she only just showed up, she explained that his mental strength was lower than that of a 5th grade pupil, and she couldn't risk him entering the fairy world with a fantasy otaku mentality. She revealed that the memory world of the fairies is a place where fairies come from, which means that they aren't actually born fairies. However, they are born from humans who become immortally bound to a master. Ding ignored all she said and only wanted her to boost his stats and give him money to buy out a motel, but she decided to transfer the manual to his phone for easier access. The next day at school, everyone recalled that he was the loser who didn't have any magic, and even when he tried to be friendly, they just avoided him, thinking he bribed his way in. To humiliate him further, they tossed a crystal at him thinking it'd glow white like it did before. But when he touched it, it glowed green and blue, which meant he had 2 attributes, which was impossible. His already dead and buried confidence suddenly skyrocketed so much that he took a girl's hand and tried to riz her up, even asking her for a date, but she freaked out and ran away while the other guys stood in awe of his boldness. Once he realized he was drawing too much attention from guys, he made himself scarce and asked the system to explain how he suddenly had 2 attributes, so she told him it was because he absorbed the vampires and fairy. She added that he also gained the ability to charm people regardless of gender and race, making him the ultimate omni-rizzler, which made him collapse in shock. That afternoon, the entire class was made to run a 10,000-meter lap, which was so annoying, as he thought there was no point for magic users to participate in endurance training. However, the rest of the class seemed pumped to participate and listened to the instructor, who was feeding them bullcrap like a true Andrew Tate fanboy. One student suggested that they do real combat training, and surprisingly, he didn't object and asked who he wanted to spar with. He chose an exhausted Ding who shamelessly refused the challenge, but the instructor made him accept the duel by force. Just then, an entourage showed up and everyone watched as the guard allowed the princess to step on him as she got down from the carriage. While they prepare to watch the duel, the students realize the guard is a famous warrior called Lour who was chosen by a dragon. Although Ding still had no intentions of fighting, the other guy wanted to show off in front of royalty, so he attacked with his wind spell that couldn't hit Ding thanks to a barrier the system activated. When the guy attacked with a tornado next, Mo Fei addressed him as Lu, explaining that the wind user could easily be defeated if he released her. However, Ding was the king of pettiness, so he decided to rely on his own powers to fight the show-off. He used a vine to break out of the tornado, but after defeating his opponent he somehow collapsed and found himself in a place that looked like the aftermath of a war. He saw people seriously injured and ragged, and he also saw the young version of Mo Fei who was on the brink of death. He decided to help her clear her fever in an alley, but some men arrived shortly after demanding that he hand her over to be sold. He tried to stop them, but they smacked him away, but he still snatched her from their hold hoping to escape, but they caught him, stumping on him repeatedly, which made him black out and woke up back in the academy infirmary. Here the system explained that he went to the fairy memory world where all the experiences of the fairies are played out like a memory. Since he saw Mo Fei in the world, he finally understood what she meant when she told him fairies were originally humans. He decided to reach out to Mo Fei to sort out the misunderstanding, but she told him to command her as her master where she wouldn't obey a clown like him. Ding told her he was all for women's rights and certainly wouldn't force her to do anything she didn't want to, which made her applaud his speech with a face of sarcasm. While they talked, some students found their way into the infirmary thinking it was empty. He assumed they were the vampires hiding in the school, but he realized he was too weak to fight, which made him cry because he'd be screwed if they found him. The system sensed his anxiety, so she opened a group chat, adding Mo Fei, who told him to let her eat the vampires, claiming it would increase her powers. After draining a sick student completely dry, the guy looked like me 2 weeks into my last relationship. The girls report to their leader, who asks them to find him a new human to feast on. Seeing that they were outnumbered, Ding decided not to do anything as he didn't want to be the protagonist who does dumb and dies in episode 3 of his story. While eating noodles that night, he heard a noise on his door, so he went to hide and freaked out thinking the vampires had tracked him all the way home. He slowly opened the door to allow the intruder enter, after which he sucker punched the lady from behind. He soon realized it was the Princess Anki, but after observing that she was not accompanied by anyone, he dragged her body inside and put her on his bed to recover. The idiot also decided to sleep on the same bed with her, and when she woke up, she thought he was a pervert and punched the living out of him, causing his ugly face to become even uglier. He tried to explain that he saw her pass out in his doorway and was only helping out. However, she was more angry that he let her sleep in a round-down apartment, which was bad for her royal skin. Ding decided to appease her with a bowl of instant noodles everyone in the universe loves. They soon noticed some people were outside the apartment, so they hid before the girls broke into the place looking for him. The vampire girls began to search around for him, so he led them into the room where he bound them with vines before escaping with Anki, who had a brain slower than a Windows XP computer and thought they were playing a game. Once in the forest, he made her take another path while he drew the vampire's attention to himself. Before they catch up to him, Ding summons Mo Fei to protect him. She first used her sword and speed to disarm them, after which she summoned graves from hell that created a barrier to trap them in one place. Just then, their master arrived from above to destroy the barrier, after which he killed his whining minions with a single slash of his sword, which made the system estimate he was a level 8 knight that would be difficult to defeat with Mo Fei's current abilities. However, she still attacked him head-on, promising to survive until she took revenge on Ding. After fighting for a while, she got pushed back and became exhausted, which made Ding ask the system what they could do to help her out. The system told him Mo Fei was weak because they didn't have chemistry, and to make her power up, he could either build a healthy relationship with her or rebuild the fairy memory world. He decided to go for the second option, but she told him he didn't have enough magical energy to be transported into the realm. Seeing that Mo Fei was being pushed back by the vampire knight, Anki showed up and volunteered to give him some of her spiritual energy. As the battle continued, the princess noticed the knight looked familiar, but Ding tried to distract her from realizing it was actually her bodyguard. When he promised to make her more instant noodles, she became motivated and began channeling her juice into him. The knight noticed what she was doing, so he charged a powerful attack to kill them both, only for Mo Fei to shield them with her body, allowing Ding to go back to the fairy world, where he found a much older Mo Fei fighting some guys she easily defeated. When the last one begged for his life, she spared him, but then he decided to pull a dick move to attack her from behind. But she already anticipated the move and slew him. This time, he was invisible to her and could neither speak nor even touch her. Yezi, the system fairy that accompanied him, claimed it was because there was another version of him present at the same time. While tracking her, they watched her encounter a guy that looked exactly like Ding. She tried to buy a sword from him, but he refused to sell it, so she left, leaving Ding, who was having a deja vu moment. From her apartment, she watched him entertain the street kids with his playing, but quickly looked away because he was giving major red flags. Later that day, the ruling gang beat him up for disturbing the neighborhood with his awful music that was almost as bad as Drake's new album. He endured the beating, knowing that they'd also sell off the girl with him if he decided to run away from them. Mo-Fei recalled how someone like him helped long ago, so she stopped the thugs from violating him further and sent them running. As thanks for saving him, he handed her the sword she offered to buy earlier. But she thought there was a catch, so he told her it was only a gift. She still thought it was worth too much, which made her promise to protect him anytime he got into trouble. Moving on. Meanwhile, Ding was observing the situation and surmised that they were in a simulation where the writers planned on replacing him with a hotter version of himself. He claimed his lookalike, Lour, was acting out the weak kind guy just to make Mo-Fei fall in love with him, and even thought he teamed up with the thugs to make everything believable. Meanwhile, back in the real world, Mo-Fei continued to buy time for Ding, but the vampire knight blasted her away and prepared another attack to finish off Ding. However, Mo-Fei still blocked his path, so that when he attacked, she let him penetrate deep into her chest and used her blood to bind him in place. The knight claimed he just had to wait for her to run out of blood, but Mo-Fei believed Ding would make it in time. Back in the fairy world, Ding was having a field day, insulting Lour, whom he called all sorts of names out of jealousy. But Lour told him to stop being a brat, revealing that he could see and hear him all along. When Ding asked him what he planned to do with Mo-Fei, Lour also asked what he was going to do with the female protagonist of the video game he loves. Ding argued that he should stop treating Mo-Fei like a game character, but Lour told him he did the same thing when he was Isekai, as he thought fairy power was the surest way to rank up. Lour headed to Mo-Fei's apartment, where he was welcomed with a sword on his neck, as she was a hitman with more trust issues than my ex. Lour scolded her for treating her visitor roughly, but in her defense, she claimed that no one had ever knocked on her door except assassins hired to kill her. She asked him if he came because someone was bullying him again, but he revealed he only came to give her some cookies that fell when she attacked him. When she tried to pick it up, their hands made contact in a cringy way that made Ding want to throw up. They go on a date later on, where he revealed that he was an explorer and had seen the best places in the world, but his favorite was a mansion surrounded by beautiful red spider lilies with a lake close by that reflected the blue sky. Like any girl, she was captivated by his smooth talk, so he used the opportunity to ask her to accompany him there. While Ding watched from behind, baffled at how he was easily pulling a Pete Davidson on her. In the following weeks, he became her cook and personal live-in house husband who cared for her so well. After being spoiled with love and affection, she confessed that she was a killer for hire, and as expected, he accepted her with all her flaws like an experienced Tinder playboy who wanted to smash and run. Ding could only watch in frustration as he used every book in the game to capture her heart while he couldn't do anything about it. When she went to take her next job, her contractor warned her to stay away from the walking red flag called Lour. But our girl had deep dived in love and wanted extra jobs to save up money. After saving up enough money to leave the town with Lour, they both arranged a date to secretly leave the place together. For the remaining days left, Mo-Fei walked her ass off, taking on so many jobs, after which she packed her things ready to leave. The criminals were so happy she was going, as they could now do whatever they liked without her interference. But when they saw her expression, they begged for their lives. However, she let them off and simply walked away to the lighthouse to rendezvous with Lour as planned. She waited from morning until afternoon and began to worry that he might not make it anymore. Ding watched her wait for 3 days and nights, but no matter how loud he yelled at her, she didn't notice his presence. The next day, her employer showed up asking her to help them fight the next district gang that wanted to take over their turf when they noticed she was absent. When the gang bombed the lighthouse she was waiting in, she finally got pissed and picked up her sword to fight off the people who stood in her way. She made her way to the group's main forces, who held a girl hostage and asked her to surrender or they would kill the child. She noticed it was the same child Lour helped, so she asked her where he was, but the girl told her he was already dead. This made her so angry that she massacred the entire unit to avenge Lour and save the girl, but when she tried to comfort her, she stabbed her in the stomach, after which Lour showed up as the mastermind of the show. She soon realized she was betrayed by Lour, who was in league with the criminals of the town the entire time. She managed to stand on her feet to approach them with only her treasured memories of him as her driving force. Just then, some fairies showed up to kill every single one of the criminals surrounding her, leaving just Lour. When she tried to attack him, she was blocked by a fairy who pushed her back with a chain, protecting her master until Mo Fei's sword broke in two. She finally fell down exhausted and injured, but instead of finishing her off, Lour revealed that he usually has fun traveling around the world and turning women into fairies, so he'd also turn her into a fairy, since it was a sure chance at immortality that would also ensure she got her revenge on him someday. She resigned herself and allowed him to plant the fairy seed in her. Ding tried to punch the cruel man for messing with a lady's heart and making her go through so much pain, but he revealed he was only playing a game to make the characters evolve. He told him to stop the judgment as they are the same soul, claiming he has actually been trying to make his dream of becoming a powerful protagonist come true. After he disappeared, Ding was left in the dream world with Mo Fei about to be sealed as a fairy seed. He asked if it was possible to stop the process with his blood, but Yezi told him it was too dangerous as he could die in the real world if his mental state fell too low. Regardless of the danger to himself, he picked up the sword to run it through his chest. However, he began to hesitate, which made him drop the sword like a loser he was, but he decided to climb up the vine, trapping Mo Fei, giving her a kiss before intentionally falling into the sword on the floor. Once he died, Mo Fei was shown flashbacks of her life, but this time, he was visible in the memories. This made the seal break, and she was able to free herself from the vines, causing the plane to change into a calm realm where she wept that she didn't realize he wasn't Lour until it was too late. However, he didn't actually die as he was able to get her to like him in the last moment, which boosted his vitality as they were in the spirit realm. She suddenly drew her sword, asking him to explain what was happening, so he explained that he and Lour are actually different people and he was only able to come to the fairy world thanks to Anki's magic powers. Together, they returned their consciousness to the real world where the princess immediately collapsed, having exhausted all her magical powers for him. Once again, he was excited to test out his protagonist privilege, and for the first time, he was able to merge with Mo Fei, whose vines stuck into him, causing her powers to flow into him. With his new fairy form, he sent the knight flying with a single punch and followed through with another attack that was dodged. He summoned vines from the ground, which the knight sliced into pieces before facing him head-on in an intense exchange that Ding used his overwhelming speed to dominate the fight. Despite being bodied, the knight charged towards Ding, who was busy choosing between lame superhero names for his ugly form. For the last attack, he used a serious punch that blocked the knight's sword before sending him down with the force of a meteor that shook the earth and created a crater. After the battle, the chairman showed up to congratulate him for defeating the vampires and gave him 2 fairy seeds as a reward. The following day in school, the Princess Anki and Mo Fei are introduced to the class as new transfer students, but when they go to sit with Ding, who was slacking off, everyone in class stares at him with devouring eyes. When Anki asked if he was able to rest after all the activities they went through the previous night, all the guys assumed it was some freaky like creating plots, so they chased home all around school asking him to share the ladies' contact information with them. He managed to invade them and headed to the library, where he asked the librarian to help him pick some books on how to accelerate magic plant growth. Once he finished his order, she used her magic that's more accurate than my Spotify shuffle to recommend the scrolls that matched his needs. She told him he could only use 2 of them at his current magic level, so that night, he went to the forest to test it out, only for Yezi to reveal that the scrolls are only for ordinary plants and would not work for fairy seeds. He began to throw a tantrum, so she told him not to worry as she had already eaten the information from an encyclopedia, which would allow her to formulate methods to unseal the seeds. Together, they figured out the conditions necessary to grow the seeds, which Ding made possible with his useless wooden abilities. Meanwhile, the vampire knight somehow survived the beating he received from Ding, so he went to report to his master, who was ready to kill him for his failure. However, when he reported that he was stopped by a legendary fairy master, the master instructed him to bring back a fairy and kill its master if he had to. After days of waiting patiently by the riverside, his fairy seeds finally sprouted in a display of magic energies that merged together, causing a giant flower to bloom inside, from which the fairy was born. Ding was super glad the method finally worked, but Mo Fei noticed something wasn't right. Immediately, the fairy gained consciousness. She called him fake and tried to attack him, so Mo Fei quickly drew out her sword in response. But before she made contact, the second fairy seed also gave birth to another fairy at the other end. The first fairy, known as Lotus, referred to the new fairy as her sister, which was strange. When she noticed Ding, he quickly hid behind Mo Fei thinking she too would be hostile, but she introduced herself as Yu and greeted him as her master. Lotus decided to also respect Ding for her sister's sake, so they both posed for their TikTok profile picture, causing Ding to nosebleed out of excitement. Mo Fei quickly snapped him back to reality, so he proceeded to seal them in the fairy manual, making them the newest members of his harem. The next day, the dean invited Ding to her office, explaining that the vampire knight was coming back to take his revenge on Anki and him, so he'd have to defend his fairies with his life. She told him there was a way to get stronger before they arrived, but he should take Anki and leave the city immediately to ensure it didn't become a battlefield. Before they departed, the librarian handed him a crystal terminal where he could claim magic items in exchange for scrolls. While traveling, he made Yezi upload the terminal to his cell phone and soon noticed the other fairies were missing. Anki informed him that they saw a lake ahead and went to take a bath in it, which made him run excitedly to take a dive. But on arriving there, they saw a dragon protecting the lake. The dragon attacked with his breath of fire, which Ding was able to block with a barrier. He told him to hand over the fairies while introducing himself as Giorgio's a noble dragon, but Ding thought that he looked like an over-constipated lizard. Ding announced that they weren't scared of him as they could defeat a level 8 vampire, and on hearing this, Giorgio's began to beg for his life, claiming that he was only a level 3 trash who wanted to gain favor with the higher dragons by offering them fairy magic. Ding challenged him to a duel to test out the result of his training. However, all he did was use his very sturdy vines to pull him into the lake, knowing full well that he was a fire dragon. He quickly yielded and admitted defeat, so Ding asked him if he had treasures stuffed in his lair like most dragons. However, he claimed to be broke and decided to toss a flute to Ding, promising to save him when he was in trouble before flying away. On arriving at the hotel where they'll spend the night, Ding was shocked that the receptionist was a freaking cow, which made him uneasy. While they relaxed at the outdoor diner that night, the cowhead receptionist told them the story about the lake that was formerly called Lotus Lake. However, all the flowers withered one night. For some reason, the story pissed off Lotus, who walked away to the other end to be alone, but was followed by Ding, who wanted to know why she was angry. Lotus reminded him that she still wanted to kill him, and it was only because of her sister that she had been so calm, and this prompted him to ask what he did to offend her and make her hate him so much. But she told him she just hated him subconsciously, but since she lost all her memories, she decided to trust her gut. When he started talking about the lake and the legend of the dry lotus, it triggered her, causing her to attack Ding, which made her suffer the damage as he was still her master. Just then, 3 guys showed up to steal the fairies from him, so Ding telepathically summoned Mo Fei, and Yu, who arrived on the scene almost immediately. He decided to summon Giorgio's with the flute, hoping that he'd barbecue them in less than a second. But the Overf dragon took their side by negotiating that they only give him a fairy. The 3 fairies faced off against the 3 thieves simultaneously, while Ding was pitted against Giorgio's, who wanted payback. When he was attacked with fire, Ding jumped into the water, thinking it would be a smart move to drag him into the water like he attempted that morning. However, his vines are burned to ash by the dragon, who has enveloped himself in a flame barrier. Ding decided to attach the vines to a giant rock at the bottom of the lake to pull him down. But when he began to raise the rock, a seal under the lake was released, so he quickly asked Mo Fei for help. Immediately she jumped into the water. The thieves focused their attacks on the sister fairies, but Yu protected her sister and took a little damage as a result. This made Lotus angry, as she had a sister complex, so she unleashed her powers ready to go berserk, but Mo Fei came out of the lake to guard them. While Ding sank into the depths of the lake, he woke up in the fairy memory world again and met Lour, who told him a new game had begun. Just then, Yu showed up and noticed he had a minor injury, which made her prepare her bandages to treat him, ending up mummifying him in the process. She apologized for being too forward, revealing that she has a bad habit of tending to injured people, which was a weird kink. Once she left, Ding begged Lour not to interfere in the story by doing something horrible again, but he informed him he was the only one she could see. He asked him to find out more about her to understand her backstory, but Ding wanted to leave the world immediately, so Lour decided to swap places with him, making himself the visible version. He first hit a tree, causing Giorgio's to fall down. Although it was a younger version of the obese lizard, he still had his rotten attitude. Lour threatened to barbecue him if he didn't do as he wanted, and when he agreed, he made him investigate Yu's identity, and so he returned shortly after, informing him that she often picked Lotus for customers and wanted to find a cure for her sister's illness. Lour decided to play his Rizlord card again by approaching Yu, promising to accompany her while she picks herbs in a dangerous cave. Together, they headed inside the cave, where she saw a tiger herb and moved to pick it, but he stopped the clueless girl from heading straight for a monster. He showed her a relatively safe spot for her to pick up the tiger herb, but Georgios woke the monster up, who almost used its tail to clear her from the ground like a golf ball. Although Lour saved her in time, she still went to pluck the herb in the dangerous spot where she was almost crushed by rocks, but Lour used a cheat to save her once again while Ding couldn't do a thing. As the monster raged, Lour wanted to defeat it with his magic, but Yu dragged him away from the cave because she didn't want him to get hurt. However, they soon stopped when the path ended on a high cliff, so Lour faced off against the big cat on steroids. Lotus also grew a pair of steel balls and decided to attack with a stick. But before the cat could crush her stupid ass, Lour saved her and jumped over to the other side. She fainted due to the shock, so he placed her down and jumped back to the other side to confront the annoying cat while Georgios watched from afar to see how long he could last. When the monster attacked with its full force, he used a finger to stop its paw before proceeding to knock it down cold with a finger, and he also noticed Georgios was responsible for waking its unusual rage. The sly lizard tried to deny it, promising to do anything to make up for the misunderstanding, which made Lour instruct him to get an herb that grows at the bottom of the cliff. When Yu woke up, he handed her the herb she made Georgios pick for him, which made her affection for him skyrocket. I mean, who doesn't love a caring guy? The next day, Lour consoled her while she wept about her sister's condition, which couldn't get better no matter how hard she tried. He revealed he might know a cure for her illness, and when Yu promised to do anything in return for the information, he told her the name of the mixture was Purity of 3 Incantations, which sent shivers down her spine, but she got a hold of herself and made him promise to assist her. Some days later, Lour confessed his feelings to her, claiming she was the most beautiful Barbie girl he had ever seen, but she wasn't ready to accept anyone's feelings, prompting him to ask if she planned on wasting away her life by looking after her ill sister for eternity. That night, she continued to take care of her vegetable sister as usual, but she didn't give her the latest herb she acquired as she hadn't yet figured out the side effect. However, the sister wanted to try it regardless, which made her confess that it was given to her by Lour, but she didn't trust him enough to use it on her yet. The next day, Lour rented a boat which they used to go into the lake together. There, he told her about the incident where she was playing in the lake with Lotus but was caught by vines, which made her jump in to save her and ended up with an incurable blood disease. Just then, she started coughing up blood, making him realize she wasn't Yu but Lotus, who snuck out of the house just to meet him. Yu showed up in another boat and asked Lour to save her sister no matter the cost, even if it meant losing her memories in the process. Back in the real world, the vampire knight tried to stab Anki while she slept, but she was protected by a barrier preventing him from harming her. He realized it must be Ding's doing, but before he figured out a way to bypass the spell, Anki woke up and hugged him as she wasn't aware he had already betrayed them. Outside, Mo Fei continued to battle the brother trio, who coordinated their attacks perfectly and easily captured the sister fairies, who were still weak and useless. While Mo Fei single-handedly held her own against the 3 of them, Anki arrived with the knight, who surprisingly joined the battle but took the enemy side, knocking out the sister fairies. Back in the fairy world, Lotus tracked Yu down to the lake where she met with Lour instead of going to pick herbs in the mountain. She felt so betrayed, and when she heard Yu rant about how she was a never-ending burden to her, she broke down in tears while Ding could only watch. That night, Yu prepared the herb by adding her blood as the last ingredient and made her drink it while she revealed she had fallen in love with Lour. Although Lotus acted like she was happy for her, she secretly took a knife and attempted to stab her. But Yu already expected it and forced her to run the knife through her chest, after which she told her to take her body to the lake as her blood could be used to cure her illness for good. Lotus managed to bring her to the lake where Lour was waiting for them. He revealed that Yu intentionally made her hate her as it was the only way to sacrifice herself, but instead of accepting the cure, she made a pact with Lour to turn them into fairies, giving them another chance to be sisters again. Immediately, he turned them into fairy seeds by the lake. He explained to Ding that Yu's evolution into a fairy was incomplete, while Lotus became a temporary psycho because of the trauma. Ding was so pissed, having witnessed another sad story caused by Lour, who took everyone as mere game characters instead of actual humans. Ding tried to punch him for his cruelty, but he beat the shade out of him as he was the one in control of the world. He reminded him that there was still a battle going on in the real world, but he was stuck in the fairy world as he wasn't able to change anything. Lour caused a time loop that made Ding the protagonist of the story this time, giving him a chance to do something different. As a result, he is able to relive all the moments with total control of the outcome. He decided to meet with Lotus and inform her of Yu's plan to make her hate her so she could sacrifice herself to save her. He convinced her it was the wrong thing to do and made her agree not to harm Yu even when provoked. As a result of this move, the three of them were able to experience happy moments together, and Lotus was able to slowly recover thanks to his recommendation. Lotus was even able to prepare a meal for them which she drugged, causing them both to collapse at the same time. When he woke up, the sisters were not in the house, so he hurried to the lake only to find the exact same outcome Lour planned out during the first loop. He still didn't want to accept the outcome of the story, so he begged Lour to give him another chance to change things, which he was given, causing him to relive the loop again. This time, he waited until the moment when Yu was about to get stabbed and stopped the process, explaining to Lotus that her sister wanted to sacrifice herself to cure her. This time, he was able to make the sisters understand each other's intentions before it was too late. But despite his success, Lour revealed he wasn't able to actually change the past. But his feelings were able to get through to Lotus, who was prepared to face the consequences of her actions. Together, they created an array that sent Ding back to the real world along with Giorgio's, who swore loyalty to him this time. Back in the real world, he emerged from the lake with Giorgio's, who was now his ally. Giorgio's casually stumped the knight like a pancake while landing and took Anki, who was still stupid enough to be on the wrong side of the battle. Before the battle continued, Lotus fused with Ding, which made him evolve into a more powerful form. This granted him the ability to control water, causing him to easily freeze the knight in place. Before Yu got her cheeks clapped by the first thief, he also saved her by freezing her opponent solid. The second brother tried to attack with a wind spell that couldn't even get past his barrier, so Ding enveloped him with water, causing him to drown. While the last thief used his weak strings to bully the disgrace of a dragon, Ding showed up with a serious punch that made him spill his guts, but still followed up with more combos because he was stylish. By this time, the vampire knight had broken free from the ice, charging a powerful skill that only made his sword bigger to hide his insecurity. Ding called on Mo Fei to fuse with him, making him evolve further to a fairy king with so much magical energy that it only took a swing of an arm to make the knight bend over. He wanted to enjoy the boss battle a bit more, so he let the knight come at him freely with his sword while Ding made a trident to battle him just for fun. Although the knight was fighting to kill, Ding casually tried out fancy moves that were still enough to send him flying. For his next trick, he summoned a barrage of icicles from the waves, so the knight decided to confront them by doing a multiple shadow clone jutsu. While he was occupied, Ding attacked him with his trident, after which he controlled the waves and yeeted him back to the bridge. He began to charge a supermassive Rasengan to finish him off, but Anki shielded him and begged Ding to stop. This made him send the attack to the skies and undo the Fairy King transformation, after which the Vampire Knight decided to leave on his own without putting up another fight. Not that it would matter though. At the same time, the lake returned to its natural form by syncing with Lotus, who willingly exchanged her life force as atonement for doubting Yu in her previous life. The remaining fairies went back into the manual to build up their magic powers, while Ding and Anki continued their journey with Giorgio's as their new Yuba ride.